didn't rename the chat. Chapter 16. Save. Done. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to Hannah Reads Books. This is chapter 16 of the 7 Songs of Merlin. In the last chapter, they re-met Quen, the treeling, and she turned them into fish. So they could get to the next place. And Merlin learned the soul of the first song. So, here is chapter 16, Liquid Thrill. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Wind rushed past. I fell down, down, down. I fought to take in some air. No use. The howling wind tore at me, yet I could not fill my lungs with it, as I had done before. Then, with a splash, I hit cold water. My gills opened wide. Gills! I breathed again at last. As water moved around me, it also moved through me. No more arms, no more legs. My body was now a single, streamlined tail with flexible fins above and below and on both sides. One of the fins curled around a small stick, which I guessed was all that remained of my staff. What had happened to my satchel, boots, and tunic, I had no idea. It took me a moment to find my balance, for whenever I tried to move my fins, I flipped over to the side. And it took more than a moment for my second sight to adjust to the dim, scattered underwater light. Except for the layer of water closest to the surface, there was practically no light at all, only gradations of darkness. After several minutes of struggling, however, my confidence began to improve. I discovered that swimming required completely different movements than it had with my human form. Stroking was out of the question. So was kicking, at least in the old way. What I needed to do was sway my entire body from side to side, like a living whip cracking. Every single scale on my skin, from my gills to the tip of my tail, joined in the motion. Soon I found I could whip through the waves, and I could move up or down as well as left or right. A slender fish, mottled with greens and browns, swam over. I knew at once it was Rhea. For although she had been underwater longer than I, she moved with the grace of the current itself. We waved our fins in greeting. She made some sort of coughing sound, and I realized that she was laughing at the sight of my miniature staff. At that moment, Bumblebee, trailing a torn ribbon of kelp from his tail, swam slowly toward us. While he wore no bells, there was no mistaking him. From the front, his sagging chins made him look like an eel wearing a ruffled collar. It was the closest he had ever come to being funny, although he had no idea. Our first task was learning to keep together. Rhea and I took turns in the lead position, with Bumblebee always following behind. In time, Rhea and I began to swim with increasing coordination. A sixth sense slowly emerged in us, the same sense that binds an entire school of fish together. After the first full day of swimming, the two of us moved almost as a single connected being. A quiet, liquid thrill moved through me as we swam through vast forests of swaying kelp or leaped through the rolling waves. I could taste feelings as well as flavors in the currents. I could sense the joy of a family of dolphins, the lonely struggle of a migrating turtle, the hunger of a newborn sea anemone, yet I never forgot the seriousness of my quest. Even as I reveled in the experience of being a creature of the water, I knew that all of this was merely a means of saving time, and perhaps Ellen. Still, I promised myself that if I ever survived this quest and one day actually became a wizard, perhaps even the mentor of a young king or queen, I would remember the virtues of transforming my student into a fish. One of those virtues was discovering the great amount of food the sea could provide. Why, the sea was really one enormous floating feast. Day after day, I ate enough insects, eggs, and worms to feel bloated. Rhea, for her part, proved adept at catching tasty little crayfish. While Bumblebee drew the line at worms, even he tasted many of the sea's strange delicacies. At the same time, we tried to stay alert to the danger of becoming someone else's delicacy. Once I swam through a tunnel of bright yellow coral, only to find a very large, very hungry fish waiting for me at the other end. As quickly as I darted away, I surely would have been caught, but for the even larger creature who suddenly appeared, scaring off my pursuer. Although I just barely glimpsed the creature who had helped me, it seemed to possess the tail of a fish and the upper body of a man. For 6 days and 5 nights we swam steadily northward. Often after dark, the pale light of a swelling half-moon danced upon the waves. Yet the moon's beauty escaped me. I saw in its face only the face of someone else, someone I feared losing forever. Less than 3 weeks remained. At last the moment when Rhea veered sharply toward the coast. She led us to a small delta where a freshwater stream emptied into the sea. I could taste, mixing with the salty flavors of the wide waters, the purity of melted snow, the playfulness of the otters, and the unwavering patience of a stand of ancient spruce trees. We surged up the stream as far as we could. Then, concentrating my thoughts, I repeated the command that I had learned from Quen. All of a sudden, I stood knee-deep in a tumbling cascade, clutching my staff in one hand and Rhea's arm in the other. Just downstream, Bumblebee threw himself on the marshy bank, coughing and sputtering. He had, it seemed, forgotten that people tend not to breathe too well with their heads under water. While Bumblebee recovered, Rhea and I shook some of the water from our clothes and ourselves. Meanwhile, she explained that she believed that this stream flowed down from the Lake of the Face itself. Before long, all 3 of us were trekking along the stony stream bank, climbing with the rising ground. A tangled forest of alder and birch that clung to the bank made the going difficult. Every time Bumblebee tried to shake free of the branches that grasped at his cloak, his bells rattled soggily. At one point I paused, panting hard from the climb. Spying a shaggy-topped mushroom growing among the roots of a birch, I pulled it from the ground. "Strange as it sounds," I said as I took a bite, "I'm going to miss those little white worms." Rhea wiped her brow and grinned at me. She picked her own mushroom. "Maybe you'll find some more worms at the Lake of the Face." "How did it come to have such a name, do you know?" She chewed pensively. "Some say it's from the shape, which is a little like a man's face. Others say it's from the power of the water." "What power?" "If you look into it, according to legend, you will face an important truth about your life, even if it's a truth you would rather not know." And that is the end of chapter 16. So tomorrow we will read chapter 17. Thank you for joining me. Have a good night.